And that morning, literally, I woke up, I had my Weetabix minis, and I was eating them, and like literally the laptop was going ding, 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 ding. And Keish, my wife, was just like, "What is that sound? What's going on?" I was like, "We've just opened up our calendar. And
We made it, baby."
Jack, how was your Easter?
Easter was good, man. Yeah. As you know, I'm not a fan of bank holidays. I don't think anyone that runs a business is necessarily a fan of bank holidays.
No.
I'd love to hear people in the comments, if you love bank holidays and you're a business owner, comment so we can have an argument. Spent lots of family time, mate, and chilled with the girls. It was lovely. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yours?
Yeah, no, all good. I've actually had I was saying to you earlier, this Easter weekend has been a very valued Easter weekend. Usually, like you, I'm always itching to get back to work. Although this weekend I didn't. So yeah, that was me.
Work ethic of Jacob.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast all about growing a business. So today what we're going to talk about is how we built a 6-figure fitness studio in 4 months. So obviously, as you guys know, we launched one of our fitness studios, Revamp, to capacity in about 10 days. And when I say 10 days, just to kind of get to the detail of it, it was 10 days of consultations, right? Which we filled up the space. But over the stretch of 4 months, obviously, we've been able to grow it even more. So today we're going to talk about how we did it, how we pre-sold all those memberships, the front-end offer we used, the different membership structures that we have in place, as well as the retention strategies, and a secret sauce at the end as well.
This one's going to be tons of practical stuff that anyone who listens to this can just take and use, and it's proven. So because we did it, but let's go back to the start. Yeah, let's talk about how this started really as an experiment, Jake. We thought that we could do it quite quickly, and we had the goal to fill up the studio before we even opened the doors for our first ever session, and we managed that. And now it's on track to do around 300,000 this year, which is pretty cool. But there's a backstory to that. One to where I took, around 80, 90 sales consults in like 2 weeks or something.
It was a
mad.
blur, wasn't it?
I lost my voice. I was pretty ill afterwards.
You had a chest infection.
Yeah, it was. I felt like I was going to war, which was pretty cool. But let's talk about how we got to that point and the 5-step process we used.
Yeah, so I mean, to take the story back even further, obviously what happened is we were coaching personal trainers how to transition online primarily. And so we're helping them build out their offers, all their systems, their automations, the sales processes, all that kind of thing. Got to a point where it's like we felt like we were one of many different business coaches in the market. And essentially, if you were to take the layers off, you'd realize that every business coach trying to get a personal trainer to move online is essentially helping them do the same thing. But for a market like, personal trainers wanting to go online, they're always looking for the new thing. Came to a point where we were like, we could either continue down this path, trying to build new mechanisms and kind of like dressing them up as something new, or we could carve out our own path. And that basically came as a result of working with a few studio owners ourselves. We ended up getting them incredible results in, not a lot of time. And I said to you, I came up to you one day, I said, Jack, this is it. We're going to work with studio owners now. This is exactly the model that we love, exactly the system that we want to build. Let's do it. And you were like...
And I responded with, why don't we just open one ourselves? So that's exactly what we did. 2 weeks later, we signed a lease and we got to work. But the biggest point, I think, during this whole process was when... I'm a big fan of Elon. You don't really like him that much, but I think he's done all right in business. Elon Musk, right? And we loved what he had done with the Cybertruck. So he was bringing out a new massive Cybertruck looking spaceship thing, which was pretty cool. But he didn't have necessarily the money for production, so he took hundreds of thousands of payments up front for the Cybertruck for something that wasn't even built yet, and he used that cash to build and produce the Cybertruck. And we loved the concept of that. And I remember you saying to me one day, why don't we just run a pre-launch for this? I think you literally put it like that.
So yeah, I think we've either just about to sign the lease or we'd already signed it. And we were like, we should probably, intuitively we knew we needed to build up some kind of hype and the buzz around the studio and everything. And literally I was about to press post on the first announcement in our local Facebook group about like, there's a fitness studio coming to Hadley. And before I pressed post, I was like, actually, we could probably go one further here. Like waiting list is probably a good idea. We should probably, create a quick opt-in page and collect email addresses and just see how many we get. Anyway, after that first post, I think we had like over 300 people all submit their email address. And basically the value prop was, we're going to do this. And if you want to join us for the ride and if you want to hear about all the cool things that we're doing, then you join this email list, you'll get to know first.
Yeah.
And that was like a split decision made within a few seconds of hitting a post. And if we haven't done that, I don't think we'd be in the position we are right now. I think we have a lot to owe to that waiting list and that email list.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny, isn't it? Like the longer you're in business, the longer you act on intuition. And that was one moment in time where we did something without necessarily realizing the value of it, but we did it because of all the education that we'd built up, in previous years.
Yeah, I think you call it sharpening your tools, don't you? And it's completely right. But I think most personal trainers who want a studio, who then get enough cash together to go open a studio, open it from day one and say, come and join me, right? So they have no customers from day one, no cash flow, nothing. They just hope that they can take some one-to-one clients who they've maybe previously been with at another gym over to the studio to keep that rolling. But really, they're no further forward. They just have the cost of a studio.
Which is mad to think, like the amount of expense that goes into opening up a studio. Yeah. Why would you wait until your opening day to actually start cash flowing it? When in actual fact, you could, like we did, pre-sell a majority of your memberships and actually generate enough revenue within the business to, what week did we pay our first quarter lease? Like literally the first week, wasn't it?
Yeah. First week with upfront cash we'd taken.
Yeah. See, there's not many business models that you can do that with. This is obviously the luxury of a semi-private gym.
So what we did was we mapped out a 3-month timeline, a launch timeline. And even though our first quarter payment of the lease was within that timeline, we were completely okay with that because we knew what was going to come in that 3 months. And we took the local public with us. We got them to vote on logos. We got them to vote on names. We did giveaways and all of that amazing things. And all the public got behind us during that 3-month timeline, which meant when we actually released an offer to the public, which was about a month before we actually had our first session, we had 80, 90 sales consults booked, ready to go, which enabled us to obviously get to what our capacity was at that time. I think was 65 members. So that was a 65 people on the front end offer, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it enabled us to collect over 20K from that offer, which was awesome. And that enabled us to start with 4 coaches here taking sessions. It enabled us to pay all the costs that we had and kick off with a full studio, which was epic.
Yeah, and just a little bit on the actual 3-month timeline. So obviously you kind of referred to it there. Every week we'd send out a new update, and that update would be linked to some sort of action we wanted the email list to take. So whether that voting on the logo, helping to choose our signage outside, all of that fun stuff. And we got to a point where obviously we needed to signal the offer, the 6-week challenge, the first introductory offer that we had in place. And one thing that I think definitely worked in our favor there was we were very, very clear, throughout the whole process, what our capacity was going to be.
Yep.
Because ultimately, in order to drive interest, you need to have constraints, right? And that helps to obviously build ethical urgency, scarcity, all that kind of thing. So we were very clear as to what our capacity was, and that helped us generate enough FOMO and demand so that we could manage that tension accordingly. So to dive into that a little bit deeper, when it came to us actually launching the first offer, like you said, like a month before, whenever it was, or when we wanted people to book appointments, we split the sales process into 3 phases. So we had the initial, which was like, we're going to give this to, obviously we had the email list and we had the Facebook group. So we had private and public. But one thing we did is obviously we had the waiting list, the email list that we said we're going to tell you about the offer before we tell anybody in the public. But then we went one deeper. And again, this was based on intuition. We didn't really have a plan to do this, but it felt right. It was like, we're actually going to segment our waiting list to a priority list of people who are really, really keen. And that gave us an indication from like day one as to, okay, who's serious about this and who's just kind of following on for the ride. So even before we launched our calendar to book appointments, we already had a very, very clear idea as to how many appointments was going to get booked. Yeah, and that morning, literally, I woke up, I had my Weetabix minis, and I was eating them, and like literally the laptop was going ding, 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 ding. And Keish, my wife, was just like, "What is that sound? What's going on?" I was like, We've just opened up our calendar. And
we made it, baby. What did Conor McGregor say? Break out the red patties.
I didn't say that.
We made it, baby. No, awesome.
But that's just the power of pre-selling any membership. Is that, again, just to conclude, like you can bankroll your entire build out. You know, if you've got equipment to buy or whatever, you've got a lease to meet, you can do all of this stuff before actually doing any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And this works, by the way. I've literally just got off a call to a coaching client of ours in Cambridge, and he's in week 4 of the same timeline, 3-month timeline that we used. We laid it all out for him, and he's got 460 people on his waiting list. So like this works. Taking the public with you, getting them excited about something, really, really works. And I recommend everyone who's opening a studio do this.
Cool.
Let's move on to number 2, which goes into it quite nicely. So obviously we pre-sold and got everyone on sales consults with us for a front-end offer. We kept it so simple. So we obviously did a lot of market research, and we got to a front-end offer, which was a 6-week challenge for £299. Mm-hmm. And that's what we went with. And of the consults that booked, we ended up with like, Jake, do you know the exact number? It was like a 78% close rate or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
To the people that showed. And the beauty of what Jake just mentioned, we called it a skip the queue list, which was the priority waiting list, wasn't it? We enabled them to skip the queue. And we knew that those guys had really high intention. So not only would they more than likely show up, but they would also buy as well. And a heavy amount of those first 65 members were the skip the queue list, which was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, that front end offer killed it, and it still kills it to this day.
Yeah, again, like we mentioned it in the last episode, but testing that against a short duration offer, 6 week has come out on top. But one other thing that we did, and again, like something that we did by accident was, you know, when football teams sign a new player, they take a picture of them with the t-shirt and they post it on their socials, right? And we thought it'd be a really cool idea to do exactly the same. So every time somebody signed up to join the challenge, we gave them a free t-shirt, which was a bit of a surprise and delight. They weren't expecting that at all. And then we just asked them for a photo using the phrase, or everybody that's signed up so far, we've got a photo of them. Do you want to join them? And having that kind of like a bandwagon effect enabled everybody to, be completely fine with a photo. But then what we did was we posted all of those individual photos on Instagram stories and actually in the Facebook group too. So in the same thread as us publicizing the offer, we posted a comment under that post basically with every single person that just signed up. So that drove so much FOMO. That drove so much like kind of, we had the early adopters, which were obviously the ones that booked the appointments, but then we had this sudden flow of the late adopters who wanted to book these appointments because they saw their friends doing it and they saw maybe they got a little bit competitive and thought, oh, that person's doing it, I want to do it as well. So we were able to build that up with the front end offer, and that just was like a really nice flywheel that just got which filled up our calendar for that 10 days, and just having those photos in place, I think definitely helped.
Hey, quick one from us. If you're enjoying this episode, you'll love our free weekly newsletter.
It's for current and aspiring studio owners who are looking for the latest growth hacks to sign up more members and keep them.
It's a quick 2-minute email covering the stuff we're testing in our own gyms.
So you'll be getting access to what's working today.
If you're interested, you can join 3,500 gym owners and go to thefitpreneur.com and subscribe.
That's thefitpreneur.com. Anyway, back to the episode. Yeah, I just want to dive on into why a front end offer.
Yeah.
Some people might be listening to this and go, what's the point? Why don't you just send them straight to membership? 2 main reasons. Number one is obviously to subsidize ad spend. So you can use a good proportion of that $299 to increase your ad spend. So that's number one. Number two is 6 weeks is a great amount of time for someone. It's like a honeymoon phase for anything, especially for fitness. So they go to 6 weeks and they get working out 3 times a week. They get to meet new people. And by the end of the kind of 4 or 5 weeks, which we'll talk about in a bit, they're at the absolute point of loving it. They've integrated these habits into their life. Now, if you were to say, let's dive in a month-to-month membership for 12 months, it's so much friction because it's such a big step. Whereas people see a 6-week time period, especially a challenge, as a challenge, right? They see it as a trial. Let's test this out for 6 weeks. And if I love it, great. And if I don't, like, no harm. It's just 6 weeks. And that's where the product comes in and is so important to make that 6 weeks as incredible as possible. But of course, once they do the 6 weeks, the front end offer, they need to move on to something. You need to have a next step for them. And we decided to keep this so simple with one membership option. And this is step 3, guys. This is one membership option. We don't have 2. We don't have 3. We have 1. Just one option. So let me just take you through one of our clients' journeys, I think, to lay this out. They've signed up for the 6 weeks. Now, they have an incredible first 4 weeks of that 6 weeks. At the 4th week, we do what we call a progress check-in, right? We call it a recommit meeting, but a progress check-in to the client. And it really is a progress check-in, because what we do is we get them in, we rescan them with composition, body composition. We talk to them about their experience so far, the coaches, the programming, they love it, the people, all that kind of good stuff. And then we lay out terms and what's next for them, right? And what's next for them is a month-to-month membership, which is £59 per week, okay? The membership option is 3 sessions a week, okay? So they get 12 credits over 28 days, every 28-day cycle. And that is the only option we have. We don't have a 2-session a week or a 1 session. It is a 3-session a week membership at £59 a week. Now that's led to a recommit so far from the 6 weeks of about high 60s.
Yeah,
I think
definitely over 50%. I think we allowed for 50%, but it's definitely exceeded that.
Yeah, which has been great, which means the product is great. The coaches are great. They're loving their experience. But at that 4th or 5th week, you want to make it so that they couldn't see their life without it. And that is a really good amount of time, that 4 or 5 weeks, to be able to gain that. So like that's led us to right now, we've got over 70 monthly members recurring, which is great. The rest are on the front end still. But our terms are very simple. It's a month-to-month membership, £59 per week with a 2-month cancellation period. Now, we weren't going to do that. We owe Ashton from Evolve in London. He does that there, and that's just a great way of doing it. So members actually commit. And the 2-month protects the business. It just means that you can get someone else in when that 2 months is over. So that's kind of, we just talked about front end there, and then we talked about what they go in from a membership standpoint.
But that also, you touched upon it, the fallacy of having a multi-product environment in a semi-private gym, because you've kind of got this angel and this devil, and the devil's saying to you like, oh, add more options because more people will sign up because they'll have more optionality. And it's like that Wetherspoons menu of just, so much there to choose from. But like, again, I use the analogy of a Wetherspoons menu and the menu at the Ritz. You go to the Ritz, there's like 5 things on the menu, 4 things on the menu. It's a set menu. So you're limited in choice, but the perceived value is higher. So that's why like when you have a 1 membership option at the beginning, it allows you to get to capacity, with that membership. You can then either exceed the price, or you can start to open up the different product lines, right? Having like a 1 membership option per week or whatever. And I think going about it that way is so much better than trying to spin all those plates at the beginning. It's because you have different people to please in different ways, and then you just become burnt out.
I think the biggest problem is, Jake, not being able to actually know your capacity. If you have more than 1 option, it becomes really, really difficult to estimate what your capacity is.
That's true.
And so many personal trainers or studio owners, Jane comes in and she says, oh, I've loved this so much. The 6-week challenge has been amazing, but I can only commit to 1 or 2 sessions a week. And then they bring in a 1 or 2 session product line because Jane can't commit to 3, right? But if the product's good enough and the people are good enough, Jane will go out of her way to commit to 3. We've had people ask that of us. We've had people ask if they can do 2 6-week challenges because maybe the month-to-month might be a bit out of their reach. And from a business perspective, it's almost business suicide just to start bringing these rules in for people, because you set a precedent then. You have to stick to your guns. And we've had to say a lot of no's, unfortunately, to people we love, right? And who are great fits to this community. But ultimately, we have to keep it simple, because that's what keeps it productized.
100%. So we talked about obviously pre-selling memberships, front end offer,
launch,
the 1 membership option. But obviously a semi-private gym, well, like any gym, is built on the back of monthly recurring revenue. You need some kind of like machine there producing the same, or if not higher, obviously, in an ideal world, revenue per month. So that's why we needed MRR. So MRR, monthly recurring revenue, you're going to need retention as like the biggest lever. So those progress check-ins that you just mentioned are so important, because not only are you able to meet somebody just before the end of their current journey, in this case, a 6-week challenge, but you're also able to recalibrate their goals. 4 weeks, they've been able to maybe hit a few milestones along the way. Perhaps they haven't been able to lift the bar and now they can, for example. So now it's a time where it's like, okay, this is just obviously, as you know, this is just a small portion of what the experience is here. How about we integrate Revamp or any fitness studio into your lifestyle? And that's where it comes with being an ongoing member. So a couple of retention ideas that we put in place. And again, these are things that you do internally for your members that you can't necessarily always measure. You can't just do something and be like, well, that yielded this many people in terms of retention or recommitting. But a couple of ideas that we've had, obviously, is the branded merchandise. I love the idea of being able to give somebody something physical and something tangible that they can hold, which speaks to their new identity, right? So a Revamp t-shirt, or if any gym t-shirt that you give them, as long as it's branded, they now have something in their wardrobe that they put on, which conforms to their new identity. And it's very difficult to look at that t-shirt or that hoodie or whatever in your wardrobe once you stop becoming a member, because it's a reminder of who you once were. So we want something in place that they can physically take home and add to their wardrobe or put in their house or wear out, that speaks to the new identity. So obviously merchandise is great for that. Another thing we did is obviously we wanted to hire the best coaches, and usually those aren't the cheapest coaches. You kind of have to invest in good quality coaches with a lot of experience behind them, because that for example, being a member here, 90% of the experience is the sessions, right? Yeah. So if we had somebody who was rubbish leading those sessions, no doubt that would lead to a lot of people churning and deciding to quit. So we knew right from the beginning, if this is going to work, if we're going to be able to not only acquire new members, but retain them, we need the best coaches possible within the local area. So obviously that was a very key factor in terms of retention that we put in place. Do you want to go through some others?
Traffic light support system. We took this one from actually our online coaching days, which works really well. So a text goes out to every single member, and they get to. It takes like 5 seconds, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's key, because we wanted to eliminate all friction. I hate the feedback forms that you get from like companies that say,
paragraphs.
Can you spend the next 5 minutes filling this out? And if we sent something like that every single week,
we wouldn't get data.
No.
So they literally just vote. They click a button, whether that's green, yellow, or red.
That's the traffic light.
And yeah, it is. And if it's red, they get to tell us why it's red. And as soon as anyone votes red at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, they get a call from us to see if we can solve that red as soon as possible.
Another cool thing is that the green actually opens up an option to leave a positive review. And then again, we automate those in terms of collecting testimonials, making content off the back of it, ads and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, 100%. Surprise and delight members. So an example of this.
Have you seen the series Bear? The Bear on Disney Plus.
No, I've heard of this.
So there's an episode in that series where he goes to learn how to become like a Michelin star chef. And there's a great scene in it where I think one of the women eating in the restaurant says, I'm leaving Chicago tomorrow and I never got to have my Chicago Town pizza. This is obviously a Michelin star restaurant, right? So obviously he overhears this whilst going around the tables, waiting on the tables and everything. So what he does, he runs down to Chicago Town Pizza down the road, picks up a really dodgy deep pan pizza, and then he takes it back to the kitchen in the Michelin star restaurant and obviously presents it in a nice way, and he gives it to her. She's like, "Oh my god, how did you know that? Like, this is what I wanted." And I think that is the purest, representation of surprise and delight. I think if you do something without expecting a thank you and you just do it because of the sake of doing it, I think that is what separates most gyms from others.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we actively tell our coaches to look out for things. So whether someone says, I want to go to cinema to see this film, I haven't got to get there yet, and we get a Cineworld voucher or something like that, we do £100 restaurant vouchers in a really nice local restaurant here. If someone refers and all that kind of stuff, it's just surprising delight new members, and you have margin to do that.
Yeah,
guys. So the biggest thing is make sure you have an offer where you actually have margin to be able to do that.
Don't lose money over this stuff.
Yeah. Quarterly team building events, really fun. Last week we went to a place called Clip and Climb. Super fun. Clip and Dine, had pizzas and drinks afterwards. We go hard on those. We have around a £500 budget on each of those, and that works really well. And then birthday cards and vouchers. This is the biggest one, and actually, because we have so many members, we've had to factor this into our P&L.
I think it was, what was it, like a couple of months ago? It's like, you do realize we kind of on average spending about £100 a month on like gift vouchers.
Yeah, no, I think it's more. I think I did last month's P&L was 140, I think. But we, if someone's birthday's come up, we got automated reminders that come to our email to say, it's, Karen's birthday in 1 week's time. We head to our local shop. We get a £20 John Lewis voucher. Put that in a birthday card, write a really nice personal message, and give that to the member.
Again, it's like doing those things that don't necessarily scale, but I think leads to a really positive experience.
Oh, the amount of messages that we have back.
And that's
people just can't believe it.
That's another added benefit. Cool. Again, like, don't get me wrong, we don't do it for this reason, but like the content that you can create off the back of doing surprise and delight stuff, because usually members will shout about the nice things that you do.
They'll post it on Instagram stories. That's a simple reshare. It's very, very simple to do. But guys, you can do this because you have margin, and it's good to do because they're valuable to you.
And ultimately, the happier your members are, the more likely they are to tell other people, and the more revenue you'll make. So it's that simple.
It's a win-win. Cool. That's 4 steps. Number 5 is we reinvested. This is quite a big one. We see tons of studio owners actually not reinvesting back into themselves, their studios.
Do you know why I think that is?
Go on.
I think personal trainers are conditioned to sell their time for money, right? Every personal trainer that starts out on the gym floor usually has this kind of formula in their head of like, okay, the more hours I am on the gym floor working with said clients, the more money I'll make, right? And that the more money I make is going to go, straight to my bottom line. I'm just going to draw that out, right, at the end of the month, or even worse, continue just to spend it. So I have no idea really what's coming in and what's going out. And I think when personal trainers make the jump to become a studio owner or a fitpreneur, that's the disparity. I think that tends to happen of like, okay, now I need to actually organize my finances. So this idea of money coming in and then you then paying or reinvesting that money into the business, there's either like this, they're either not sure on what to invest in, or they just don't reinvest. And then they wonder if like they get 2 months down the line and, a wall's got a crack in it or something. And they're like, what am I going to do about that?
Yeah, because they don't have any reserve cash. Obviously, we invest heavily in marketing. We haven't needed to a ton. We have quite a bit in the last couple of months just to make sure we're filled with recurring members. But we're investing kit. So, for example, like programming, every single 8 weeks, there might be 1 or 2 exercises in there that needs a certain bit of equipment. So we just go straight to Black Box or Wolverson, wherever we go, and we buy that kit.
And that's another great thing in terms of surprise and delight, especially for members like, what I'd really like is, an extra, 2.5 kg plate or whatever. Can you go and, can you sort that out? And then by the time of the next session, it's there. And again, for them, it's like, they're listening.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's something that we've done pretty well, is listen to members and feedback. We've made just a huge change this week, haven't we? With actually getting some feedback from 3 or 4 members. I always say with feedback, make sure you've got a big enough pool of feedback with people saying the same thing. Don't just make a big decision off one piece of feedback. Try and get like a decent amount of people saying the same thing before you make big changes. But mate, that's everything. So just to recap on how we've built this to 6 figures in 4 months, and how we were completely full before we even opened the doors. Number 1, pre-sold memberships, went through that timeline we spoke about. Number 2, we had a front end offer, which was obviously 6 weeks challenge for $299. We had 1 membership option that those front ends went onto, which was a £59 a week month-to-month membership with 2-month cancellation, which has got us high 60s, 68, 69% retention rate, which is great. Number 4, we focused on retention. So we brought all of those ideas in. So we talked about merchandise, best coaches, traffic light systems, surprise and delighting, all that kind of stuff. And number 5, we reinvested. So a good percentage of the profit that we made, we've reinvested back into equipment, into ads, to make sure that we could keep on acquiring new front ends, and we can keep members happy.
Yeah, I think it's also important to make the last point. I think especially when it comes to like online and these gurus sending you ads and whatnot, like it's very difficult to get sucked into, I want to choose the easier route when it comes to my personal training business. And usually just because of the amount of ads pumped into your timeline every day, that looks to be online, right? And don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of opportunity online. And, we coached online personal trainers for a long, long time. But I think it's important to know that, and anybody listening to this right now thinking, okay, online's the obvious route for me to scale my personal training business, doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Like if you love coaching on the gym floor, if you love meeting clients face to face, and you really feel like that's, where your expertise lie, there is another way, and it is a fitness studio. It is owning something. And I often say to you, don't I? Like I think most personal trainers feel like they need to step up to become an online PT. Where in actual fact, like if you're already coaching clients in person, you just need to step sideways and figure out actually how you can own something with your name on it and deliver a great service. And again, to give you context, just to back that claim up, it took us 5 years to get to a point where we had a 6-figure online coaching business. And it's taken us 4 months to do the same with a brick and mortar facility in a town with 8,000 residents. So it just shows that actually, if you have expertise in a specific area, don't try and reinvent the wheel and go and do something just because you feel like that's the thing you should do. Go after what you want and go after where your expertise lie, because you might notice something different.
Let's end on that.
Cool.
That's the pod.